Hi, everyone. I am going to have a conversation today with Kathryn Julia. She is a massage therapist. She's been practicing massage since 1978. She has been a massage therapist for 43 years. She is 70 years old and she does still see clients today, as she likes to call them. And she has also been a teacher of massage therapy for many years. She began teaching massage therapy in 1981. And she's also my Auntie Kathy. So you get to meet my aunt. Hi, Auntie Kathy. How are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. How about you, sweetheart?
Good. So I wanted to have this conversation with you because I think that you're such an amazing resource to have now that I am also working in the healing arts field. I'm always bragging about you and telling all my massage coworkers that my aunt has been practicing for 43 years and what a resource you've been to me in my life when it comes to holistic healing. And I think this is an interesting time to have a conversation about massage therapy because there's been, some tragedy in the news. I know that was mostly a racist attack, but the fact that they went into a massage therapy clinic and shot people and said that it was because the person was sex addicted. Like, why do you automatically think, massage therapy and sex? There's some misconception around that, it seems like. So I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to just kind of have a conversation about massage therapy, what it's all about, how you've seen it change through the years since you've been practicing, since 1978. And just have a little conversation around patient practitioner boundaries. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Ethical boundaries.
Yes. So how have you noticed people's perception of the profession of massage change from the 1970s to today?
It's huge. It's been really quite an honor to watch this industry grow. When I started in 1978, there really weren't any ready-made jobs for massage therapists. You pretty much had to just go out and get your own clients. And even in Waikiki, they weren't too crazy about massage people being in Waikiki either, because they thought that we were prostitutes, right? So a lot of the hotels wouldn't the concierge wouldn't call massage therapists. So you pretty much had to gather your own clients. And it was around 1984, I believe, when the U.S. Olympics was, or the national or international Olympics was in Los Angeles, and the AMTA had gathered a group of volunteers to work with our athletes and do massage on our athletes, and that's when it really came into the public's eye. So it was through sports massage that it really came into the public's eye and started to get recognized. The athletes realized they did a lot better when they had massage. The Chinese and the Russians had massage therapists all along. And so now that the American people did too, they even now have their own private massage therapists that travel with them. So, I mean, that just goes to show how it's just spread. We've gone from the classification of adult entertainer to healthcare professional. So that was quite a shift. And now there's massage clinics available. There's health clinics where they have massage therapists along with other therapists. There's, the hotels have spas like crazy. Like one hotel can employ like 30-40 massage therapists, in their spas. Yeah. So it's just grown immensely, really grown. Part of why my friend and I started a school here in Hawaii was because the only schools available were for shiatsu, or you could go live with a kuhuna, you could a kumu, and go live with her for a while and learn lomi lomi, but there was really no school to go to. So my friend and I started a school so people could come.
It's amazing. And how many people do you think went through that school? At the you had it from what, 1981 to 2000 or?
Till 2000, yeah, 81 to 2000. It's really hard to say. It was hard to keep track. I always felt like I was just running alongside of it to keep up because massage was getting very, very popular. So well over 1,000 students. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. How big were your class sizes, would you say?
They would range anywhere from 5 to 10 students.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. And then
Um,
after I was done with my school, then I went and worked at Remington College and was a part of the massage program at Remington College. And we had some classes up to 20 students.
wow. That's
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah. You're teaching at a Chinese medicine school now, right?
yes, I am. Yeah. They wanted to be able to add massage therapists, for their students to be able to sit for the massage license. So they hired me to create a massage program for them. And
Yeah.
so we're doing it now. We had our first student go through. It was really great.
Yay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, what do you think the biggest misconception is that the profession of massage is still facing today?
It's there's a couple things. One is, well, first of all, just the whole sexual aspect that it's a prelude to sex or a cover up for sex, which unfortunately it still is in some cases. But quite honestly, the public has become quite well educated about massage therapy. So I would say there's less of the population that believe it has to do with, just paying for sex, or yeah, I'd say less of the population. My students don't run into that much at all. Whereas
Yeah.
for me, it was an everyday thing. When I started out, it was, you just kind of made a game out of it, Once I learned it wasn't my problem, so yeah, then you just kind of made a game. And then there were some men that were very, why does this happen to me? Why do I feel like this? Why does this happen to me when I get a massage? And the truth is, it's like, especially for men, a lot of times touch stops being part of their reality from when they're maybe 5, 6 years old, and then later on in life, when they become sexually active, touch becomes a part of their life. But then touch and pleasure and sex all kind of get mashed together. So it's about having to separate the understanding about, pleasure, and you can feel pleasure. It doesn't have to be sexual. It's sensual because it's very intimate what we do. We're for me, my hands are on somebody's body for an hour or more continuously, and that's a lot of that's a lot of touch stimulus. And that gets the oxytocin going, right? So then people start feeling good and start feeling pleasure. And then a lot of times the mind will go into a sexual space because pleasure and sex are so interrelated in their own mental concept.
Right. Yeah. I asked that question because I remember even watching like Friends when I used to watch Friends when that was airing when I was in high school, and Phoebe was a massage therapist, and they were always making jokes about like happy endings or patients that were coming on to her, or maybe she thought her patient was cute or something like that. And they never really talked about the healing side of massage. They were just kind of constantly talking about the sexual aspect that people kind of think of when they think of massage sometimes. And, that is, as somebody who owns, a massage clinic now, that's completely inappropriate, right? Like you're not supposed to have sex with your patients. I mean, that goes without saying. They hammer that into you in school. And you have to have good boundaries in the room. So I was just wondering, I know that I had talked to you one time and you had said that back in the 80s, basically everyone just thought you were a prostitute. So I just was wondering, if you still face that today or if your students were still dealing with that today.
Not much at all, really. not much at all. Occasionally,
Mhm.
I suppose, some of the client or some of the therapists do, but it's not like it was before. It was just all
Yeah.
pervasive, and mostly it was just men that got massage. Women hardly ever did. Now women are getting massage all the time, and it's great. It's great.
Yeah.
And a lot of my clientele in the very beginning was elderly people. It'd be
Mm.
like the person's son or daughter would hire me to go work with them,
Yeah.
because their mom or dad was in pain all the time or whatever. And so a lot of my clients are elderly people. So the other misconception about massage is that it's a flamboyant luxury,
Mhm.
yeah, rather than it's actually a healthy practice, something really healthy to do for your body.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I started out my working life as an adult after I graduated from college, I didn't have any money. I was making no money at all. But I always made sure that I saved enough money to have one massage a month because, I mean, well, I grew up with you, so I just knew how healing massage was. And that was like my one thing that I made sure was part of my self care routine because life is stressful and massage helps de-stress the body, but it also is really good for pain. And we build up these chronic like pain patterns just with repetitive motions that we are doing every day at work, whether it's just sitting down for long periods of time, or I worked in restaurants, so it's constantly lifting things and holding trays in stagnant positions. And so I always found that massage was something that I needed to keep my body functioning. And if I didn't get it, that my body would stop functioning and I would become, be in pain and be stressed out from the pain. And so it's just, I think it's an important part of a self-care routine. I'm an acupuncturist now, so I think that's also really important, but
It
that's a whole
is
different
totally
chat. Yeah.
combination too is really powerful. Very, very.
Yeah. Oh, they go
Uh,
together so well. Absolutely.
and and it's not just for the body because it's for the whole being, for the entire the whole being, the whole physical, emotional, and mental aspect, because we get off kilter. Sometimes we get all stuck in our heads, and then our body's aching because we're not paying any attention to it, or our mind gets racing, and we get all stressed out from just nonstop thinking all the time. And just to take that hour, that's why I've been trained in so many different modalities, but my go-to is always just a nice 1 hour full body massage that from head to toe, that just the person just goes into this state of relaxation like meditation, you know,
Mhm.
and it's very rejuvenating on that level too, you know.
Yeah, it takes you out of the fight and flight nervous response and puts you into the rest and restore nervous response, which
Yeah.
is super important because in our modern world, we're constantly like go, go, go.
Hmm.
There's always something that needs to be handled. There's always an email coming through on your phone or text messages coming through from work or something. So it's so important for us to get back into that rest and restore because if we're in a chronic state of fight and flight all the time, um, we're just burning out our adrenals and adrenal fatigue is real.
Big. It's
Yeah.
real. And I like the way you call it rest and restore. What I like to call it is calm and connect.
Hmm.
Okay. And that's Kirsten Uwe Smolberg, who wrote the book, The Oxytocin Factor, who did a lot of research on oxytocin. And oxytocin is the love hormone. It's
Hmm.
the one that puts you, well, if we physiologically, we can say it takes you from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah.
And it puts you in a calm situation so that you're able to connect with yourself, able to connect with the people around you, able to connect with your environment, right? If you get into that fragmented fight, flight, freeze, it's like go, 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 go. You get disconnected, almost like you're this isolated little satellite, you know, just
Hmm.
just bouncing around the world. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So how has schooling changed since you were just telling me you didn't actually go to school, but talk a little bit about that, like what it was like, what schooling was like back when you got your license, and then, how it's changed from to now?
Well, there weren't very many schools. There just weren't. I think probably the oldest school in America would be the Swedish Institute in New York. But otherwise, like when I was seeking out school, like I said, all there was a shiatsu school here, or you could go live with the with the kahuna and learn with her, or him. And but otherwise, just to like, get up and go to school, there wasn't. And that's exactly why Kathy and I started a school here, was because people wanted to learn this and it wasn't easy access. And we opened up the Honolulu School of Massage, which was a school that taught Western style massage, but we also included other modalities like Thai massage and acupressure and shiatsu and foot reflexology and things like that. So we incorporated all of those different modalities. And then as the years have gone by, each of those have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, each modality in itself. So it's just been awesome to watch it grow, just absolutely grow through the ages. Yeah. So when I started the Honolulu School of Massage, there were probably about 8 massage schools around the country. Wow. And we became we affiliated ourselves and became members of the AMTA, American Massage Therapy Association. And then they had a council of schools. And it was in the 1990, in the early 90s, because I remember the first national exam, I think, was in 93. But what it was is there was all this hemajang laws, here you don't need to, you could just hang your shingle and say you're a massage therapist. Here you can't advertise yourself because, that means you're advertising prostitution. All the states had different stuff, right? In California, you needed 1,000 hours, at Texas, you needed 300 hours. Here you needed nothing, it was like all different. So this became kind of a, kind of crazy because it was, people moving from place to place, right? So the AMTA put together a survey of over 10,000 massage therapists across the country. Like, what do you think the minimum entry requirement into the profession would be? And so with that, the answers to that survey, then they helped create the National Certification Board. Okay. And then that became its own entity. The AMTA pulled away after that. They just gave the seed money and got it going. Yeah. And then the National Certification Board put out at first it was required 500 hours, X amount of anatomy, physiology, X amount of theory, practice, client safety, ethical boundaries, all stuff like that in that program. I believe their requirements up to 750 hours now. So this was it was in the 90s when a specific amount of hours was required to take an exam. And then once you took that exam, then the states would say, okay, good, you can take our test and then we can license you.
Yeah, very cool. So, because I do work with a lot of newer practitioners coming out of school, something that comes up often is creating appropriate boundaries within the treatment room, because, the type of work that we're in holistic medicine, we do become a little closer with our patients. We're constantly talking to them about, their problems. People will cry during treatments and you just hold space for them. So it is an intimate setting, but at the same time, you do have to be able to have appropriate boundaries. You can't give away too much of yourself in the treatment room because you have to maintain some professionalism. And then as you were talking about, I think something that we talked about a little bit when I was in school was that, sometimes men can become aroused when they're being physically touched, and that shouldn't mean anything sexually to you. You just, basically they tell you just to kind of ignore it. But if it makes you, if the patient is doing something that makes you uncomfortable, they give you certain scenarios and how to react to that as well. So what would you say as a teacher, what would you say your biggest piece of advice for a new LMT to maintain professional boundaries in the treatment room would be?
You have to do self-examination.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I learned, because the first time a man became aroused on the table, I walked out of there just like paralyzed, and I'm sitting in the break room just like staring into space, like totally freaked out. And I had to get in touch with a belief that I had from a teenager, that if a man gets an erection around you, you're responsible for that, so you have to take care of that for him. And that
Mm-hmm.
was just a belief that that kind of gets put on women a lot, well, hey, you're responsible for this, help me out. And once I realized what a joke that was, then just the recognition that again, that's just a natural biological response to pleasure for a lot of men. And so for my personal boundary, it's like it's it's a natural response, and it comes and goes. But if you start expecting me to do something about it, that's my boundary. It's like, no.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that I refuse to let them have an erection in the room. That's that's like saying you can't cough or sneeze.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But you got to do, that's one thing I love about this profession, is it is that you grow along with it. And the more self growth that you do, the more self-realization work that you do, the more you understand your own shadows and your own, hang-ups, then the less affected you are by everybody else's, because
Yeah.
I remember working with the elderly people, and why was all of a sudden I was getting really freaked out about that. And I had to really realize that what I was getting afraid of, because I had this one woman, like every 10 minutes she'd break down, like, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. And so I realized that, wow, how do I feel about dying?
Yeah.
And I had to really go deep into that. And once I could totally serve her, and we would have a wonderful time in our sessions, and she wouldn't cry anymore, and stuff. And it's a lot of working on yourself. The more you work on yourself. So your sexuality, what are your beliefs? How is it for you? How do you feel when you're getting touched all over for a whole hour by somebody who's maybe very attractive and has a really loving touch? How does that feel to you? It's a lot of self-reflection, and
Mm-hmm.
then that helps you get clarity on your boundaries. Plus the associations, like the AMTA, ABMP, National Certification Board, they have a code of ethics that you can start from, and that's something we have to teach in school, is a code of ethics. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously it goes without saying that it is completely unethical. You should never have sex with your patients, or be sexual with them in any way, or touch their bodies in a sexual way when you're giving a therapeutic massage. I mean, that's drilled into us in school as well. And I think when I was in acupuncture school, the statistic that they told us was, 80%, something like 80% of sexual harassment claims that are filed against a practitioner is filed against a male practitioner. And, for whatever reason, it's just really important to always be the most professional person in the room. You never want to give anybody the impression that you're acting in a way that can be misconstrued as an advance or something like that. I mean, and that goes for females too. Anybody, any person in the room, if you're in the role of the practitioner, you need to be, professional and have professional boundaries with your patients.
Right. For instance, like, you don't date your clients.
Yeah.
You just
No.
don't date your clients. And I know some people that did, and it never turns out good. It really doesn't. You just end up losing a really good client.
Yeah. Yeah. They talk about that in acupuncture school too. And I'm not sure how you guys talk about it in massage school, but in acupuncture school, they say something like, I think legally you're not supposed to date your clients, or really have a personal relationship with them outside of work for like something like at least 3 years before they, since they stop being a client, then you can maybe date them. What I always tell the practitioners that work for me is, just don't, if you met the person because they're coming in to get some sort of treatment, pain management, whatever they're coming in for, they're not coming in to date you. This is not your personal dating service. Like that's just, it's completely against our clinic policies. And it's also against, your license's code of ethics, completely unethical conduct. So
my friend who's a psychologist, she said their rule is like 7 years.
Yeah, I think I did hear that one too. Something like 3 to 7 years or something like that. So
where I'm at is just, love happens, right? But if you're going to start dating this person, then they're no longer your client.
Yeah.
And story. And another thing I always tell them is whoever somebody is when they're laying on the table with no clothes on and you're giving them a great massage, they're not necessarily that same kind of person when they're standing up with their clothes on. They might be a completely different person.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
yeah. And you just, again, it's your own self-restraint, because my one friend had, we were talking on the phone and then she said, I have to go, I have a client. And she took off and called me later. She goes, oh my God, I went in my room and Tom Selleck was laying there buck naked on the table. I said, what'd you do with that? She goes, I just gave him a really good massage. So sometimes, that it isn't even meant to be sexual. It's just, bodies. And it's like, well, how do you feel about nudity? How do you feel when somebody walks in front of you naked? Can you just let that be? Or you think you got to take action on it,
Yeah, I noticed that, especially because in our culture, it's very, especially in Hawaii where I grew up, men walk around without their shirts on all the time. It's very it's very accepted to be kind of half naked all of the time. So I noticed sometimes, when I was a new practitioner, I would be talking to them in the room, and then they would just start getting undressed in front of me. And I would kind of just like run out of the room and be like, oh, hold on, let me leave. So part of like my entire spiel, now is I always say, I'm going to step out. I'll have you go ahead and get undressed to, however much I want that, from the waist up if I'm doing cupping or something like that. And then, go ahead and lay face down on the table. And I noticed that I have to be pretty explicit about where I want their bodies. So I want you to have your head in the table, in the head cradle. Your ankles will be over this little pillow, because so many times I've walked in and their head is like on the pillow that goes under your ankles or whatever. Or if there's sheets on the table, I will literally pull the sheet down and say, get under the covers. It's nice and cozy in here. The table warmer's on. Because sometimes people have never had a massage before. Maybe they've never had cupping before. Maybe they've never had acupuncture before. It's all new to them and they have no idea what to do. And if you don't kind of give them direction, they're just like, oh, I guess I just lay right here on the table. And
well, I have a full-on class about that, how you greet your client. You take them in the room, you give them very clear directions where to put their belongings, how to lay their body. You can remove your clothing, and the next question usually is this, well, how much do I have to take off? And you just tell them how much, and I'll keep you covered all the time. But you take charge. So you just take charge and you lead them like somebody new, like you would anybody. Yeah,
absolutely. So what should a practitioner do if their patient is behaving in a way that makes them feel uncomfortable?
I would say use their voice, say, your behavior is making me very uncomfortable. And if you continue this, we will discontinue the treatment.
Yeah. I mean, I tell my
just
practitioners that as well.
Take charge. Remember, you're in the power position. You're on your feet with your clothes on. You're in the power position, so.
Yeah. I've had practitioners before say, they kept talking about their sex life, and that just made me feel really uncomfortable. Even women would talk to another, like a female practitioner about their sex life, and maybe that female practitioner isn't comfortable, doesn't want to hear about your sex life, you know? And I've always just said, just tell them, I'm not comfortable with this conversation. I feel like this is beyond my boundary or something like that. You don't have to sit there and have a conversation that makes you feel uncomfortable just because the patient seems to be comfortable with it, you know?
Right. And you can also gently glide them into, because maybe, who knows why a woman might be talking about her sex life, maybe she was raped, maybe she needs to get a voice out, and that's the emotional part of our work, right? But things like what I've done is just said, what I notice is as you talk, your body tenses up. So why don't we not talk? And let's just really focus on each area that I'm working on, and just bring them back into their body and into why they're there.
Yeah.
If that makes you uncomfortable. Otherwise, I just let people talk, because I feel like that's part of the treatment. I have people that don't say a word through the whole thing, and I have people that talk through the whole thing. It's it's their time.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I do think part of our job as practitioners too is also to understand when maybe somebody's talking about something that is beyond your scope of practice, and you can hold space for them and listen to what they're saying, but it's not your job to offer any advice. Because,
No.
for example, if they're talking about mental health issues, or if they're talking about some sort of traumatic event or something, you hold space for them, but it's not your job to offer advice. Like, I've had patients before where I've just said, do you have somebody you can talk to about this? Do you have a therapist that you can talk to
Right.
about this?
Exactly.
Let me refer you to somebody. Or maybe, I've had patients who struggle with addiction, and I just say, I think that, I can find you some meetings that you could go to. AA is a really wonderful resource. NA is a really wonderful resource. So I refer them out in those ways as well. And
And
I think
that's our professional duty. When things go beyond our scope, then it's kind of up to us to have some referrals for our clients and stuff. Yeah.
yeah. And it's not your job to offer advice. Like, it's just really your job to hold space for them.
Exactly.
And then refer them to the proper people. That would be your advice, I guess. But, you're not always expected to have solutions to all of the problems that may be coming up in the treatment room.
Well, I know in acupuncture, you folks can diagnose. Yeah, you can diagnose and offer a treatment. Yes. In massage, we do not diagnose and we do not prescribe. So that's on all levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it, we already touched on this. I wrote this question, but we've already touched on it. If it's okay to date your patients, I just tell all of my practitioners, absolutely not. And I think that that's pretty standard what the licensing board and stuff would say as
Oh,
well.
totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And I have been shocked. I will say I have met people who have told me they dated their patients, and nobody I work with right now, but I've always said, like, that is, you shouldn't date that's playing with fire. Like, you shouldn't be doing that. It's
Exactly.
against your license, but it happens, which is kind of crazy to me. But the patient practitioner relationship in the holistic setting does tend to become more intimate than in the normal Western setting. And so, how do you do your best to create a healing space for people where they can be vulnerable, but also maintain boundaries? I mean, I think we've been talking a little bit about this, but do you have any last little specific pieces of advice you would give?
Well, the biggest thing is being able to just hold space for people. And the boundaries are, you got to understand transference
Mm-hmm.
and counter transference, and understand those things. Otherwise, just hold space. This is this person's time. They've come and they've paid for your time to be with them. And my belief is that we're with them as a whole human being and recognizing them as a whole human being. And but then there's your space and there's my space. Yeah, I have my little golden egg I keep around me, and I don't go outside of it, and I don't let anybody inside.
Yeah. Yeah, and so just for anybody who doesn't understand what the term holding space means, can you expand on that a little bit?
That just means that you're there, you're in listening in a compassionate, non-judgmental way, not about advice.
Mhm.
Um, and if we understand advice, that it's only good if it's asked for. And even if people ask me, well, what do you think? And I would just say, well, what's most important is what you think and what you feel about it. And I always just send that question back to them and let them think. And holding space is just being there for someone,
Mhm.
listening and recognizing them as a whole perfect human being, a divine being, and that we pick up all these little bits of trash as we go through life, and
Yeah.
they're in my room to release it, and I'm just holding space so they can.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't until I started talking to you and Nicole, my cousin, my aunt's daughter, about holistic peer counseling that I kind of actually understood what the term holding space meant, because I'm the type of person that I'm very much a fixer. Like if something is not working in my life, or if something's not working in my friend's life, like I want to offer them advice, I want to help them fix it. Like, how can we make this better? Like, this is, obviously you're in pain, like let's do something about it, because of my background. And it wasn't until, Nicole was like, no, that's not your job. Your job isn't to fix other people's lives. Your job is to listen to them, because some people just need to hear somebody to talk, like hear what they're saying so that they
Right.
can feel heard. But they don't actually want to hear, they don't want to
Advice.
hear advice. Yeah, they just want you to hold space for them, to be compassionate to them, so that they feel like they have somebody to talk to that's hearing them.
Right.
And oftentimes you do find that people will ask questions or ruminate on something that they already know the answer to.
Yep.
Um, and you just being there for them helps them figure that out without even having to give any advice. So
Exactly. Exactly. And another thing that stimulates oxytocin is empathy. And we can all of us, like, I don't know a single person in my life that hasn't experienced pain in some way, in their emotional world, in their physical world, in their mental space, so we can all empathize with one another, that this person's in pain, and just be with them, but the best solution to anybody's problem is the solution they come to on their own.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah, that's definitely key. All right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording, but thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. And I
I
feel
want to
like this
share
is,
something exciting with you.
yeah.
Okay, so the school I'm teaching at now, not the Chinese school, because that's like very part-time, but the school I'm teaching at now, Quantum Institute, is closing down, and myself and two other friends are opening up a new school
Oh, you
called,
are?
yep, called Manahoi School of the Healing Arts. And it's going to be just my basic massage curriculum that I've done forever, 600 hours, and tweaked it here and there to make it more updated. But then also there's a licensed spiritual counselor will go along with that. It will also be in that school. So my friend Keone, who's been brought up by his grandma and taught a whole lot of the Hawaiian culture,
Mhm.
and is a seer, so he's going to be doing a lot of the teaching on the spiritual side of it. So I'm really excited about
Amazing.
this, and our classes will start up in September.
Yay. So, where do people go to find that if they're in
And
Hawaii?
they could just come. I don't We don't have a website yet. That's all coming together this month, right? But anybody can get in touch with me on Facebook or
Mhm.
through you.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I'll put
Okay.
that in the notes for this recording too.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Well, I'm just going to stop this recording, but you stay on the line.
Okay.